Rewire your brain to succeed. Introduction. Every person carries within them an untapped reservoir of strength, potential, and brilliance. Yet for most, that reservoir remains hidden beneath layers of doubt, fear, and conditioning. We dream of becoming more successful, more confident, more alive. But too often the voices in our own heads drown out possibility. These voices remind us of past failures, whisper that we are not enough, and tell us that other people are destined for greatness while we are not. These invisible chains bind us to old patterns, keeping us stuck in cycles of frustration. But what if those chains were not unbreakable? What if your mind itself could be reshaped to unlock a new future? This is the premise of becoming unstoppable, not waiting for life to change, but rewiring yourself to rise, to persist, and to thrive no matter the challenge. The idea of becoming unstoppable may sound like a grand promise, but it is not about invincibility or the absence of difficulty. Life will always present obstacles, setbacks, and moments of uncertainty. Becoming unstoppable means cultivating an inner strength that allows you to keep moving forward even when the path is unclear, even when the odds seem stacked against you. It is about developing a mindset and identity that cannot be easily broken, one that finds energy in adversity and clarity in the midst of chaos. Unstoppable individuals are not people who never fall. They are people who always get up, who learn from every stumble, and who train their minds to transform challenges into stepping stones. What separates those who remain stuck from those who break through is not raw talent, luck, or even opportunity. It is how they use their minds. The human brain is not a fixed machine with set wiring. It is a dynamic organ capable of change at any stage of life. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections, reorganize itself, and adapt to new circumstances. In practical terms, this means that no matter your past, you can train your brain to think, act, and respond in ways that lead to success. You can dismantle the old pathways of fear, procrastination, and self-sabotage, and replace them with neural circuits built on confidence, discipline, and drive. This book exists to show you how. The process begins with awareness. You will uncover how your current thoughts and habits may be wired to limit you, how your brain unconsciously repeats patterns that sabotage your progress. Then, through tools rooted in neuroscience and personal development, you will learn how to rewire these patterns step by step. Visualization, habit stacking, emotional reframing, and mental rehearsal are not abstract concepts. They are practical methods to reshape your brain's wiring. Over time, the repeated practice of these methods strengthens new neural pathways until success-focused behaviors become automatic. But rewiring your brain is only half the journey. The other half is stepping into the identity of someone who is unstoppable. Success is not just about what you do, it is about who you believe yourself to be. When you shift your beliefs and align your actions with them, you stop fighting against yourself. Instead, you harness the incredible synergy of thought, emotion, and behavior working together in your favor. This alignment transforms goals from distant wishes into lived realities. As you move through these pages, you will discover both the science and the strategy of becoming unstoppable. Each chapter builds upon the last, guiding you to break free from limiting beliefs, install empowering habits, and sustain momentum in every area of life. Whether you seek breakthroughs in career, relationships, health, or personal fulfillment, the principles here will equip you to rise above obstacles and create a lasting transformation. The call to become unstoppable is not reserved for a chosen few. It is an invitation extended to anyone ready to stop living by default and start living by design. If you are holding this book, it means something in you already knows you are meant for more. The tools, insights, and practices ahead will show you how to claim that more, not through luck or chance, but by consciously rewiring your brain to succeed. This journey is not about becoming someone else. It is about finally unleashing the unstoppable self that has been waiting within you all along. Chapter 1. Breaking the Chains of Limitation. Every person has felt the invisible weight of limitation pressing down on them. Sometimes it shows up as hesitation before taking a step toward a dream. Sometimes as the quiet voice insisting that failure is inevitable. And often as the familiar pull of old habits that keep us circling in the same patterns year after year. These limitations are not always external. More often they are internal constructions, built from years of conditioning, experiences, and beliefs absorbed from the world around us. They become like chains, binding not our bodies but our minds. And like chains, they hold us back from stretching into the life we secretly know we are capable of living. The origins of limitation run deep. From an early age, we are shaped by the environments and people who surround us. Parents, teachers, friends, and society itself all imprint messages about who we are and what is possible. Some of those messages empower, but many do not. A child who hears, "Be careful, you might get hurt," too often, may grow into an adult who avoids risk at all costs. A teenager criticized for failing may internalize the belief that mistakes are shameful, carrying that fear into every new endeavor. Over time, these repeated experiences form neural pathways in the brain that reinforce the same patterns of thought and behavior. What began as a single experience becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Fear creates avoidance, avoidance reinforces limitation, and limitation strengthens fear. At the root of these cycles is a powerful force: belief. A belief is simply a thought repeated so many times it becomes accepted as truth. Yet beliefs can be deceptive. They may not reflect reality, only the story we have been telling ourselves. Someone who grew up hearing that money is scarce may believe wealth is unattainable for them. Someone who has been told they are not athletic may never attempt to build physical strength, even though the capacity is there. The brain clings to these beliefs because it values familiarity. Familiarity feels safe, even if it is painful, and the brain is designed to conserve energy by following the paths it already knows. This is why limitation can feel so stubborn, as though the chains are welded shut. But here is the critical truth. Those chains are not permanent. The brain is plastic, not fixed. The neural pathways that hold limiting beliefs can be weakened, and new ones can be built in their place. To break free from limitation, the first step is recognition. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Begin noticing the moments when limitation speaks through you. Pay attention to the inner dialogue that surfaces when you consider taking a risk. Does the voice say, "You can't," "You're not ready," or "You'll fail"? Recognize that these statements are not facts, but echoes of old wiring. When you catch these voices, you start loosening the chains. Once recognition occurs, the next step is challenge. Every belief can be questioned. Ask yourself where the belief originated. Did it come from your own direct evidence, or was it inherited from someone else's fears? Often you will find that the core of your limitation does not belong to you at all. It was handed down, spoken into your mind before you were old enough to decide whether to accept it. Realizing this is liberating, because if a belief was installed, it can also be uninstalled. The moment you recognize that your limitations are not truths but stories, you regain the power to choose a new story. Yet breaking chains is not an instant event. It is a process, one that requires deliberate practice. The brain rewires through repetition. To overcome a limiting belief, you must consistently replace it with a new, empowering one. If the old thought says, "I always fail when I try," the new thought might be, "Every attempt teaches me and brings me closer to success." At first, the new thought feels forced, perhaps even false. That is normal. Neural pathways strengthen through repeated firing. The more you practice the empowering thought, the more the brain begins to favor that pathway. With time, what once felt unnatural becomes the default. This process is not purely intellectual, it is emotional as well. Emotion acts as fuel for rewiring. When you imagine a new possibility with excitement, confidence, and determination, your brain encodes the experience more deeply. This is why visualization is such a powerful tool. If you close your eyes and vividly imagine yourself succeeding at something you once thought impossible, attaching strong positive emotions to that vision, your brain cannot fully distinguish between the imagined success and a real experience. It begins to fire as though the success has already occurred, strengthening the pathways that support it. In this way, you are not just breaking chains, you are forging new links in a stronger, more empowering chain that pulls you forward. There is also a practical side to dismantling limitation. It is not enough to think differently, you must act differently. Every small action taken against a limitation weakens its hold. If your limitation says you cannot speak in public, take a small step by speaking in front of a trusted friend. If your limitation insists you are not disciplined, commit to a single consistent habit each morning. Each act becomes evidence that the old belief is losing power. Over time, the evidence piles up until the belief can no longer stand. Perhaps the most important element in breaking chains is patience. Limitations that have been reinforced for years do not dissolve overnight. Many people give up because they expect transformation to happen in a moment, when in reality, it happens through steady persistence. Imagine rusted chains being filed down link by link. At first, progress seems invisible, but with continued effort, the links weaken, then snap. The same is true of the mental chains that hold you back. Persistence is what turns the possibility of freedom into reality. Breaking the chains of limitation is the first and most essential step in becoming unstoppable. If you attempt to build new habits, chase new goals, or pursue success while still bound by old chains, you will sabotage yourself at every turn. But when you recognize, challenge, and replace limiting beliefs, you unlock the freedom to grow without restraint. You begin to see challenges not as threats but as opportunities, risks not as dangers but as gateways, and failure not as final but as feedback. As you continue this journey, remember that every chain is an illusion sustained by belief. Your brain has the capacity to change, your identity has the ability to expand, and your potential has no fixed limit. The chains you once thought unbreakable will dissolve under the force of awareness, challenge, repetition, and action. What remains is a self that is freer, stronger, and ready to move forward. This is the foundation of becoming unstoppable, and it begins with the courage to face the chains within and decide that they no longer define you. Chapter 2: The Unstoppable Mindset. To become unstoppable, you must first learn to think in ways that sustain forward movement regardless of circumstance. The mind is both the greatest ally and the greatest adversary in the pursuit of growth. Left untrained, it gravitates toward fear, doubt, and distraction, repeating old patterns that maintain the status quo. But when directed with intention, the mind becomes a powerful instrument that generates resilience, determination, and clarity. Developing what can be called an unstoppable mindset means shifting your entire way of approaching challenges and possibilities. It is not about pretending obstacles do not exist, but about deciding they will not control your trajectory. The unstoppable mindset begins with identity. You cannot consistently act in ways that conflict with who you believe you are. If deep down you see yourself as fragile, unlucky, or destined to fail, no amount of external motivation will sustain success. At best, you will push forward for a time before retreating to the comfort of that old identity. This is why so many people find themselves sabotaging progress. Their actions are fighting against the current of their self-image. The unstoppable mindset requires an inner shift, where you stop asking what you can do and start asking who you are becoming. When you identify yourself as resilient, resourceful, and capable, your actions begin to align naturally with that identity. Success then becomes a reflection of who you are, not a temporary achievement you are chasing. Another core aspect of the unstoppable mindset is the way it interprets setbacks. For most people, setbacks confirm fears. They miss a target, stumble in a new venture, or face rejection, and immediately their inner voice whispers, "See, I knew it, you cannot do this." The unstoppable mindset sees the same setback and interprets it differently. Failure is not evidence of inability, but information. It is feedback about what did not work, and that feedback can be used to refine the approach. This reframing transforms the sting of failure into the fuel of persistence. It is not that unstoppable individuals never feel disappointment, they do, but they refuse to let disappointment become definition. Instead, they treat it as part of the process, knowing that every misstep is also a step forward in experience and wisdom. The unstoppable mindset also thrives on clarity of purpose. Without clarity, the mind wanders, easily distracted by the endless noise of modern life. Clear purpose acts as a compass. It tells you where to direct your energy and why the struggle is worth enduring. People with an unstoppable mindset are not necessarily those with the easiest circumstances. They are those who carry a vision so compelling that no obstacle feels final. When you know exactly what you are working toward and why it matters deeply to you, obstacles shrink in comparison. Purpose transforms resistance into training, just as lifting weights builds muscle through strain. Without clarity, obstacles feel like walls. With clarity, they feel like stepping stones. An essential feature of this mindset is emotional discipline. Emotions are powerful drivers of behavior, but left unmanaged, they can derail even the strongest intentions. Fear can paralyze, frustration can cause rash decisions, and discouragement can sap motivation. An unstoppable mindset does not deny emotions, but learns to master them. It recognizes fear and chooses courage anyway. It feels frustration, but channels it into focus. It acknowledges discouragement but refuses to give it the final word. This emotional mastery does not come from suppressing feelings, but from understanding them, reframing them, and directing them toward productive outcomes. Over time, this discipline builds a kind of emotional resilience where challenges trigger not panic, but resourcefulness. The unstoppable mindset is also rooted in consistency. Inspiration can ignite action for a day, maybe a week, but it is consistency that shapes destiny. Small, repeated choices accumulate into remarkable transformation. This is why the unstoppable do not rely solely on bursts of motivation. They cultivate habits and routines that carry them forward even when motivation wanes. Consistency is the bridge between intention and result. It is built not on perfection but on persistence. Missing a step does not mean starting over. It means resuming with greater awareness. The unstoppable mindset treats consistency as non-negotiable because it understands that greatness is not built in moments of excitement, but in the daily discipline of showing up. Equally important is the way the unstoppable mindset handles uncertainty. Life rarely unfolds in straight lines. Plans change, opportunities shift, and the unexpected emerges without warning. Many people become paralyzed in the face of uncertainty, waiting for perfect conditions before they act. Those who are unstoppable do the opposite. They embrace uncertainty as part of the journey and act despite not having all the answers. They trust that clarity will grow through movement, not hesitation. This willingness to step into the unknown creates momentum, and momentum often reveals paths that hesitation would have hidden. Cultivating an unstoppable mindset also involves the deliberate use of focus. In a world overflowing with distractions, focus has become one of the rarest and most valuable resources. The unstoppable direct their focus with intention, investing energy in what matters most and refusing to be consumed by trivialities. They know that every moment spent dwelling on limitations, gossip, or comparison is a moment stolen from progress. Focus is not only about time management. It is about mental discipline. It is training the mind to hold attention on the vision, on the process, and on the possibilities, while tuning out the noise that drains energy. One of the most transformative aspects of this mindset is gratitude. It may seem out of place in a conversation about being unstoppable, yet gratitude is what keeps the drive for success from turning into desperation. Without gratitude, ambition becomes a restless hunger that is never satisfied. With gratitude, ambition is balanced by contentment. creating a foundation of peace even while striving for more. Gratitude rewires the brain to notice progress rather than lack, to feel empowered rather than deprived. This mental state strengthens resilience because when you can appreciate what you have, setbacks do not feel like total losses. Instead, they are temporary bumps along a path already rich with value. Finally, the unstoppable mindset thrives on responsibility. It rejects the victim mentality and accepts full ownership of choices, outcomes, and responses. Life will always contain elements outside of our control, but the unstoppable focus on what they can influence, their thoughts, their actions, their attitude. This responsibility is not a burden, it is empowerment. When you take ownership, you stop waiting for circumstances to improve and begin creating the conditions for growth. You stop blaming others for your stagnation and start building the momentum that propels you forward. Responsibility is the foundation of freedom because it places the power of change back where it belongs, in your hands. The unstoppable mindset is not a gift bestowed on a lucky few. It is cultivated deliberately through daily choices and persistent effort. It is forged in the fire of challenges, shaped by the willingness to reframe failures, and strengthened by the discipline to act consistently toward a clear purpose. By developing this mindset, you do not eliminate difficulty from your life, but you transform your relationship to it. Challenges become teachers, setbacks become stepping stones, and uncertainty becomes an invitation to grow. This is the mental foundation on which all lasting success is built. Once established, it carries you forward with a force that no obstacle can permanently derail. It is not perfection that makes you unstoppable, but the decision to rise again and again, driven by the unwavering belief that growth is always possible and success is always within reach. Chapter 3. The Science of Becoming Unstoppable. To understand what it truly means to become unstoppable, we must first examine the inner machinery of the brain and body. Inspiration, motivation, and determination may feel intangible, but behind every burst of courage or every wave of fear lies a biological process. Thoughts are not abstract events floating in the air. They are electrical signals firing across neural pathways. Habits are not just tendencies, they are networks of neurons wired together through repetition. Motions are not random, but are guided by chemical messengers that shape perception and behavior. The science of becoming unstoppable rests on understanding these systems and learning how to work with them rather than against them. At the center of this understanding is the principle of neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to change and reorganize itself throughout life. For decades, scientists believed the brain was largely fixed after childhood, with its wiring set in place. We now know this is not true. Every thought, every behavior, every emotional experience has the power to strengthen or weaken neural connections. The saying, "neurons that fire together wire together," captures this process. When you repeatedly think or act in a certain way, the brain lays down stronger pathways that make it easier to repeat the same thought or action in the future. This is why habits, whether productive or destructive, can feel automatic. They are not just psychological patterns, they are physical structures etched into the brain. Understanding this plasticity is empowering because it means you are not confined by your past. The patterns that hold you back today were wired through repetition, but they can be rewired through new experiences and practices. Each time you challenge a limiting belief, visualize a new possibility, or act with courage despite fear, you are carving fresh pathways in your neural landscape. Over time, with enough repetition, these new pathways become the default, and the old ones fade through a process called synaptic pruning. The brain conserves energy by weakening connections that are not used. Thus, the very act of pursuing growth gradually dismantles the old wiring of limitation. Habits play a crucial role in this process. A habit is essentially a neurological loop consisting of a cue, a routine, and a reward. For example, stress may act as a cue leading to the routine of procrastination, which produces the temporary reward of relief. Over time, this loop becomes automatic, and the brain associates stress with avoidance. To rewire such a pattern, you must insert a new routine into the same loop. Stress may still be the cue, but instead of procrastination, you might replace it with deep breathing or focused action, followed by the reward of accomplishment. Each repetition strengthens the new routine until it becomes the preferred response. This is not merely behavioral training, but neurological engineering. You are literally rewiring the loops that govern daily life. Emotions are another critical piece of the science of being unstoppable. The brain is constantly influenced by chemicals such as dopamine, serotonin, and cortisol. Dopamine, often called the motivation molecule, is released when we anticipate or achieve something rewarding. It fuels drive and encourages us to keep pursuing goals. Cortisol, on the other hand, is the stress hormone. In small doses, it sharpens focus and prepares the body for action. But when prolonged, it drains energy and clouds judgment. The unstoppable individual learns to harness these chemical systems. By setting meaningful goals, celebrating small wins, and practicing gratitude, they stimulate dopamine and reinforce motivation. By managing stress through mindfulness, physical activity, and perspective shifts, they regulate cortisol and prevent it from overwhelming the system. The result is not the absence of stress or struggle, but the capacity to maintain balance and energy even under pressure. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and focus, plays a central role in this process. When this region is active and well-trained, it helps override the impulses of the amygdala, the brain's fear center. The amygdala reacts quickly to perceived threats, often triggering fear and avoidance before conscious thought intervenes. In ancient times, this was essential for survival. Today, however, the amygdala often misfires, treating challenges such as public speaking or pursuing a new career as though they were life-threatening dangers. The unstoppable learn to calm the amygdala's alarms and strengthen the prefrontal cortex through deliberate practices like mindfulness, visualization, and reframing. Each time you override fear with conscious choice, you train the brain to reduce the power of automatic fear responses. Over time, the amygdala becomes less reactive and the prefrontal cortex becomes more dominant, enabling clearer focus and bolder action. Another vital scientific insight is the brain's bias toward negativity. Psychologists call this the negativity bias, a survival mechanism that makes us pay more attention to threats than to opportunities. Our ancestors needed this vigilance to detect dangers in the environment, but in modern life, this bias often keeps us fixated on problems, doubts, and failures. Becoming unstoppable requires actively countering this bias by training the brain to notice positives, achievements, and opportunities. Practices like gratitude journaling or reflecting on daily wins are not just feel-good exercises. They actively rewire the brain to balance the negativity bias. Over time, this creates a more resilient mental state where challenges are acknowledged but not allowed to dominate perception. Flow state, often described as being in the zone, is another scientific phenomenon closely tied to becoming unstoppable. Flow occurs when you are fully absorbed in a challenging but achievable task, where time seems to disappear and performance feels effortless. Neuroscience shows that during flow, the brain releases a cocktail of chemicals that enhance focus, creativity, and motivation. Achieving flow regularly requires structuring tasks at the right level of difficulty. Not too easy to cause boredom, not too hard to trigger overwhelm. The unstoppable understand how to design their environment and routines to invite flow, allowing them to sustain high performance without burning out. Sleep, nutrition, and physical activity also shape the brain in profound ways. Sleep consolidates learning and strengthens new neural pathways, making it essential for rewiring. Exercise stimulates brain-derived neurotrophic factor BDNF, a protein that supports the growth of new neurons and enhances cognitive function. Nutrition fuels the brain with the raw materials it needs to produce neurotransmitters and maintain energy. The unstoppable treat these elements not as luxuries, but as foundations of mental resilience. They recognize that their mindset and determination are deeply linked to how well their brain and body are supported. The science of becoming unstoppable reveals a simple but profound truth. Success is not just about willpower or personality. It is about learning to align your biology with your aspirations. When you understand how your brain works, you gain the ability to reshape it intentionally. You are no longer at the mercy of old wiring, fear responses, or unproductive habits. You have the tools to create new pathways, regulate your emotions, and build resilience into the very structure of your mind. What makes this science truly powerful is its accessibility. You do not need a laboratory or advanced training to apply it. Every time you practice a new habit, reframe a negative thought, visualize success, or take consistent action despite fear, you are engaging in neurological transformation. The laboratory is your daily life, and the experiment is your willingness to apply these principles. The more you practice, the stronger your brain becomes in alignment with your goals. The unstoppable individual is not superhuman, but simply someone who has learned to harness the science of the brain. They understand that fear is natural but not final, that habits are powerful but malleable, and that the brain is not a prison but a tool. By working with the brain's natural processes instead of against them, they create a momentum that feels unshakable. This is not about erasing struggle, but about rewiring your relationship to it, turning obstacles into opportunities and setbacks into lessons. The science does not replace the heart of personal growth, but it strengthens it, providing the evidence and mechanisms that make transformation sustainable. To become unstoppable is to merge inspiration with biology, determination with neuroscience, passion with practice. It is the realization that every step you take to grow is not just changing your life on the outside, but literally reshaping your brain on the inside. With this knowledge, you step into the next stage of transformation, not as someone at the mercy of limitation, but as the architect of your own mind. The chains of the past weaken, the pathways of the future strengthen, and momentum begins to build. Science confirms what human spirit has always intuited. You are capable of change, and that change begins in the brain. Chapter 4. The Power of Belief and Identity. If the science of neuroplasticity explains how the brain can change, then belief and identity explain why that change matters. At the core of every decision, every action, and every result is the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you are capable of. Beliefs form the lens through which you see the world, shaping not only how you interpret events, but also how you respond to them. Identity is the deeper layer beneath those beliefs, the answer to the question, who am I? Together, belief and identity act as the blueprint of your life. If the blueprint is limited, your actions and results will be limited. But when the blueprint is expansive and empowering, you align your thoughts and behaviors with success almost effortlessly. To rewire your brain for lasting transformation, you must first address this foundation. Beliefs are not always consciously chosen. In fact, most are absorbed without question during early life. A child who hears constant encouragement may grow up believing they are capable of achieving great things, while a child who hears criticism and doubt may develop beliefs of inadequacy. These beliefs settle deep into the subconscious and influence behavior in powerful ways. When you believe you are not good enough, you unconsciously sabotage opportunities that could prove otherwise. When you believe success is possible only for others, you hold back from pursuing it yourself. What makes beliefs so powerful is that they act as self-fulfilling prophecies. The brain seeks evidence to confirm what it already believes, filtering out contradictory information. If you believe you cannot lead, you will notice every stumble as proof and ignore every moment of confidence as a fluke. The cycle continues until the belief appears to be absolute truth. Yet beliefs are not facts. They are interpretations, conclusions drawn from experiences. often without full perspective. Consider someone who once failed at starting a business. If they form the belief, "I am not cut out for entrepreneurship," that belief will prevent them from trying again, even though the failure may have been due to timing, resources, or strategy rather than innate ability. Another person might have the same failure but form the belief, "I am capable of learning from mistakes," and this belief will push them to refine their approach and succeed later. The event was the same, but the belief changed the trajectory. This is the power of belief. It shapes destiny more than events themselves. Identity operates at an even deeper level. While beliefs dictate what you think is possible, identity dictates who you think you are. If you believe, "I am a smoker," every attempt to quit will feel like a struggle against your identity. If you shift to, "I am a healthy person," the behaviors of quitting smoking and choosing wellness align naturally with who you believe yourself to be. This principle applies to every area of life. People rarely rise above the limitations of their identity. You can force new behaviors temporarily, but unless they align with identity, they will not last. This is why so many resolutions fail. People try to change what they do without changing who they believe they are. Rewiring belief and identity begins with awareness. Start by examining the recurring statements you tell yourself about who you are. Listen carefully to the "I am" statements that appear in your thoughts. Do you say to yourself, "I am bad with money," "I am not disciplined," or "I am unlucky"? These are not harmless phrases. They are identity anchors, shaping how you interpret your world and the choices you make within it. And by identifying them, you begin to loosen their grip. Awareness alone can be uncomfortable because it reveals how many of your limitations are self-imposed, but discomfort is the first sign of growth. Once aware, the next step is intentional reframing. Instead of reinforcing disempowering beliefs, you must deliberately plant empowering ones. This is not a matter of blind affirmation, but of choosing beliefs that align with the person you want to become. If you often think, "I am undisciplined," you can begin to replace it with, "I am someone who follows through." At first, this may feel untrue because your past evidence contradicts it. But remember that the brain wires itself through repetition. Each time you practice the new identity, you strengthen the neural pathway associated with it. With consistent reinforcement and aligned action, the new identity begins to take root. Over time, it shifts from feeling artificial to feeling natural. Action is critical in reinforcing identity. The brain trusts evidence. You cannot simply tell yourself you are confident and expect the wiring to change without action. But when you take even small steps that align with the new identity, you provide the brain with proof. If your new belief is, "I am confident," then speaking up in a meeting, even briefly, gives your brain evidence to support that identity. If your new belief is, "I am disciplined," then keeping one small promise to yourself each day reinforces that discipline. Each act is like a brick, gradually building a stronger identity structure. Eventually, the evidence becomes so consistent that the brain no longer doubts the belief, it accepts it as truth. The emotional charge you attach to belief also accelerates the rewiring process. When you repeat a belief with conviction, visualizing yourself living it fully, you engage the brain more deeply than when you say it mechanically. Imagine telling yourself, "I am resilient," while vividly recalling times you overcame adversity. The emotion of pride and determination attached to that memory strengthens the neural pathway. This is why identity work is not just intellectual, but also experiential. You must feel the new belief as much as think it. One of the challenges in reshaping belief and identity is the persistence of the past. Old experiences and failures can linger in memory, ready to be used as evidence against your new story. The unstoppable approach is not to deny the past, but to reinterpret it. Instead of seeing failure as proof of inadequacy, view it as evidence of resilience and learning. Every setback survived is proof of strength. Every mistake is data for future success. By reframing past events, you strip them of their power to define you negatively and instead allow them to reinforce your identity as someone who grows and perseveres. Surroundings also play a role in reinforcing identity. The people you spend time with influence your beliefs about what is possible. If you are surrounded by negativity and limitation, it is easy to absorb those patterns. But when you engage with people who challenge, encourage, and embody the qualities you wish to develop, their influence supports your new identity. The brain is highly social, wired to mirror the behaviors and attitudes of those around us. Choosing your environment wisely accelerates the rewiring process by giving you consistent external reinforcement. Belief and identity ultimately form the foundation of becoming unstoppable because they dictate the range of possibilities you allow yourself to pursue. Without addressing them, strategies and techniques will crumble under the weight of self-sabotage. With empowering beliefs and a strong identity, even imperfect strategies can succeed because your actions will be consistent and resilient. The shift may not happen overnight, but each step is cumulative, and with every new belief you choose and every identity statement you reinforce through action, you are reshaping your brain and your destiny. Becoming unstoppable is not about becoming someone else. It is about aligning your beliefs and identity with the truth of your potential. Beneath the layers of doubt and conditioning, you already possess the resilience, creativity, and strength needed to succeed. By rewiring your brain to believe in these qualities and to adopt them as your identity, you unlock the power to act consistently in alignment with who you truly are. Once this alignment is in place, the chains of limitation lose their hold and momentum becomes inevitable. Belief and identity are not small matters of self-perception, they are the very engine of transformation. When you master them, you do not just change what you do, you change who you are, and in doing so you become unstoppable. Chapter 5. From Fear to Focus. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions known to human beings. It has the capacity to freeze us in place, to cloud our judgment, and to shrink our vision of what is possible. Yet fear is not the enemy it is often made out to be. In its original purpose, fear was essential for survival. Our ancestors relied on it to detect threats, to mobilize energy, and to prepare the body for action in dangerous environments. The same system that once saved lives, however, can now limit lives when it reacts to situations that are not life-threatening, but are instead opportunities for growth. Speaking on a stage, launching a business, having a difficult conversation, or stepping into a new career can trigger the same biological alarms as a predator in the wild. If we allow these alarms to dictate our behavior, fear becomes a barrier. If we learn to master them, fear becomes a source of energy that can be channeled into focus and forward motion. The brain's primary fear center is the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure that detects perceived threats and signals the body to prepare for defense. When activated, it releases stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline, increasing heart rate and sharpening alertness. While these responses can be useful in emergencies, they also narrow our attention. We focus on what could go wrong rather than what could go right. We see the potential for failure more vividly than the possibility of success. This is why fear often produces paralysis. The mind becomes consumed by imagined disasters, leaving little room for solutions. To become unstoppable, you must learn how to recognize these signals, regulate them, and redirect their energy toward focus rather than avoidance. The first step in this transformation is awareness. Fear often hides behind rationalizations. We say, "I need more preparation," or "this is not the right time," when in truth we are avoiding action because of fear. By honestly acknowledging fear, you strip it of some of its power. Labeling the emotion activates the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of the brain, which begins to calm the amygdala's alarms. Simply saying to yourself, "I feel fear right now because I am stepping into the unknown," can reduce its intensity. Awareness turns fear from a shadow into something tangible, something you can work with rather than something that controls you from the background. Once acknowledged, fear can be reframed. Instead of interpreting the physical sensations of fear, racing heart, sweaty palms, tense muscles, as signs of danger, you can reinterpret them as signs of readiness. Physiologically, the body reacts the same way when excited as when afraid. The difference lies in interpretation. If you tell yourself, "I am nervous," your brain reinforces avoidance. If you tell yourself, "I am excited," your brain prepares for engagement. This simple shift in language transforms fear into focus. Athletes, performers, and leaders often use this technique before high-stakes situations, turning what could be debilitating anxiety into heightened concentration and energy. Breathing is another powerful tool in shifting fear into focus. When fear activates the sympathetic nervous system, the body enters fight-or-flight mode. Deep, controlled breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the body and restores balance. A few minutes of slow, steady breathing can reduce cortisol levels, clear mental fog, and create the space needed for focus. Breathing is accessible at any moment, requiring no special equipment, only the willingness to pause and regulate. By mastering your breath, you gain direct influence over your emotional state, proving to yourself that you are not at the mercy of fear. Visualization also plays a critical role. The brain does not fully distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When you picture yourself succeeding in a feared situation, your brain rehearses the pathways that support confidence and competence. This mental rehearsal reduces uncertainty and primes the nervous system for action. Over time, visualization can desensitize the brain to fear triggers. What once seemed terrifying begins to feel familiar, and familiarity reduces the amygdala's reactivity. Visualization is not about fantasy, but about training the brain to see opportunity where it once saw a threat. Focus emerges when fear is not eliminated but directed. Fear brings energy, a surge of heightened awareness and intensity. Instead of letting that energy spiral into panic, the unstoppable individual channels it toward the task at hand. This requires narrowing attention deliberately to what is within control. When fear tempts the mind to wander into catastrophic what-if scenarios, redirect it to immediate actionable steps. Ask yourself, what is the next smallest action I can take right now? By anchoring attention to the present moment, you reduce the mental space fear has to expand. Progress, however small, generates momentum, and momentum shifts the brain's chemistry from anxiety to engagement. It is also essential to recognize that fear thrives in vagueness. Unclear goals, undefined plans, and ambiguous situations give fear room to grow. The more specific your focus, the less room fear has to dominate. Writing down precise goals, breaking them into actionable steps, and setting clear intentions provides structure for the mind. Clarity reduces uncertainty, and with less uncertainty, the amygdala's alarms quiet. Fear may still surface, but it will encounter a plan that channels energy into focused action. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. Each time you act despite fear, you provide your brain with evidence that fear does not equal danger. Over time, this rewires the association between fear and avoidance. Instead of interpreting fear as a stop sign, you begin to see it as a signal that you are entering a zone of growth. The more often you pair fear with action, the weaker its grip becomes. Eventually, situations that once seemed overwhelming become routine, not because they changed, but because your brain rewired its response. It is important to acknowledge that fear never disappears entirely. Even the most accomplished individuals feel it before taking bold steps. What sets them apart is their relationship to it. They do not wait for fear to vanish. They move forward while carrying it. They view fear as a compass, pointing them toward areas of life that matter most. If you fear speaking, it often means your voice matters. If you fear failure in a project, it often means the project is meaningful. By treating fear as an indicator of significance rather than a signal of danger, you turn it into a guide. Ultimately, the transformation from fear to focus is about reclaiming power over your responses. Fear is automatic. but focus is deliberate. The unstoppable do not deny their biology, they learn to steer it. They use awareness to recognize fear, reframing to reinterpret it, breathing and visualization to regulate it, and action to overcome it. Over time, these practices train the brain to handle fear not with paralysis but with clarity. The same energy that once held you back becomes the energy that drives you forward. Every step in this journey of rewiring requires courage, but with each act of courage, you build a stronger identity. You shift from being someone who is controlled by fear to someone who uses fear as fuel. This shift is not just psychological, it is biological, reinforced in the wiring of your brain. The amygdala quiets, the prefrontal cortex strengthens, and new pathways form that favor focus over avoidance. The process is gradual, but its effects are profound. Fear no longer dictates the boundaries of your life. Focus expands them, carrying you further than you once believed possible. From fear to focus is not a single leap but a repeated practice, a choice made again and again in the face of uncertainty. Each choice rewires the brain, reshapes identity, and reinforces belief. With time, you discover that fear was never meant to be your prison but your teacher, a reminder that growth lies on the other side of discomfort. By transforming fear into focus, you unlock the ability to move forward with clarity and determination, and in that movement you embody the essence of becoming unstoppable. Chapter 6: The Habit Blueprint. Success is rarely the result of one dramatic decision or a single defining moment. More often, it is the accumulation of small, repeated actions that compound over time. These actions, when repeated consistently, harden into habits, and habits ultimately shape identity and destiny. Habits are the invisible architecture of life. They determine how you spend your mornings, how you respond to challenges, how you treat your body, how you pursue your goals, and how you interact with others. When habits are aligned with your vision, progress feels natural, almost inevitable. When habits are misaligned, even the strongest intentions collapse under the weight of inconsistency. To become unstoppable, you must learn to consciously design your habits rather than unconsciously inherit them, creating a blueprint that rewires your brain for sustained success. At the neurological level, habits are patterns embedded in the brain's wiring. They follow a loop consisting of a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue is the trigger that initiates the behavior, the routine is the action itself, and the reward is the satisfaction that reinforces the behavior. For example, the sound of an alarm in the morning, cue, may trigger the act of reaching for your phone, cue, followed by the stimulation of checking notifications, reward. Over time, this loop strengthens until it becomes automatic. The brain favors habits because they conserve energy. Once a behavior is wired as a habit, the brain can perform it with minimal conscious effort, freeing up cognitive resources for other tasks. This is why habits are so powerful. They run in the background, shaping your life without requiring constant willpower. The challenge is that the brain does not distinguish between habits that serve you and habits that sabotage you. It wires both with equal efficiency. If you repeatedly procrastinate in response to stress, the brain encodes avoidance as the default routine. If you repeatedly exercise in response to waking up, the brain encodes discipline as the default routine. The question is not whether you have habits, but whether your habits are aligned with the life you want to create. By becoming intentional about the cues, routines, and rewards you allow, you can redesign the loops that govern your behavior and, in doing so, redesign your destiny. The starting point for this blueprint is awareness. Many people are not conscious of the habits that dominate their days because they have run them for so long they feel like personality traits rather than learned behaviors. By paying close attention to how you spend your time, especially during key moments such as mornings, evenings, and times of stress, you begin to uncover the patterns driving your life. Awareness reveals the loops that need replacing and the opportunities where new habits can be inserted. Simply tracking your daily actions for a week can expose both the strengths and weaknesses of your current blueprint. Once awareness is established, the next step is replacement. Breaking a habit is rarely about elimination, it is about substitution. If you attempt to remove a habit without replacing it, the brain resists because the loop of cue and reward remains unresolved. The key is to keep the cue and the reward while altering the routine. For instance, if boredom is the cue and scrolling through social media is the routine, the reward may be stimulation. By substituting the routine with reading or practicing a skill, you satisfy the same reward but with a habit that serves your growth. Over time, the brain begins to favor the new loop, and the old one weakens through disuse. One of the most effective strategies for building empowering habits is habit stacking. This involves attaching a new habit to an existing one, using the stability of the old habit as an anchor. For example, if you already brush your teeth every morning, you can stack a habit of reciting affirmations immediately after. If you always make coffee, you can stack a habit of reviewing your goals while the coffee brews. Habit stacking leverages the brain's preference for routines and reduces the friction of starting new behaviors from scratch. By gradually stacking small habits, you build powerful chains of behaviors that compound into major transformation. Another cornerstone of the habit blueprint is environment design. Willpower alone is unreliable. The brain is heavily influenced by its surroundings, often more than by conscious intention. If unhealthy snacks are visible on the counter, the brain is cued to eat them. If your phone is within reach while you work, distraction becomes almost inevitable. By shaping your environment to reduce negative cues and increase positive ones, you make good habits easier and bad habits harder. Place workout clothes in plain sight to cue exercise. Keep a water bottle on your desk to cue hydration. Remove distractions from your workspace to cue focus. Over time, the environment does half the work of sustaining habits, freeing your mental energy for higher-level tasks. Rewards are another essential element. The brain reinforces behaviors that feel satisfying. If you want a habit to stick, you must create an immediate sense of reward, even if the long-term payoff is delayed. Exercise may take weeks to show visible results, but celebrating each workout with acknowledgement or tracking progress creates instant reinforcement. Learning a skill may take years to master, but rewarding yourself for each small milestone keeps motivation alive. By consciously attaching positive emotion to habits, you accelerate their integration into your identity. Identity itself is where habits and beliefs converge. The most lasting habits are not those imposed by willpower, but those aligned with who you believe you are. If you identify as someone who runs, going for a jog is natural. If you identify as someone who writes, writing daily feels inevitable. By linking habits to identity, you shift from trying to change behavior to embodying a way of being. Each time you perform the habit, you cast a vote for that identity, reinforcing it until it becomes part of your self-concept. This is the highest level of habit mastery, aligning daily actions with the unstoppable identity you are creating. Consistency is the glue that holds the blueprint together. Habits are not built in dramatic bursts, but in steady repetition. Missing a day is not failure, it is simply a test of resilience. What matters most is returning to the habit quickly and refusing to let small lapses spiral into abandonment. The brain does not require perfection to rewire itself, it requires persistence. Each repetition strengthens the pathway. Each act of consistency adds weight to the identity. Over weeks and months, the compound effect becomes visible in the form of transformation that feels almost effortless. The habit blueprint is not about rigid control, but about deliberate design. Life will always contain unpredictability, but when your habits are aligned with your vision, they provide stability in the midst of uncertainty. They carry you forward when motivation fades and anchor you when circumstances shift. They free your mind from constant decision-making and channel your energy into growth. With each habit consciously designed, you are no longer a passenger in your own life. You are the architect, shaping routines that wire your brain for resilience, discipline, and unstoppable momentum. When you look at those who seem unstoppable, what you are often witnessing is not extraordinary talent, but extraordinary consistency. Their habits align with their purpose, and over time those habits build identities that sustain success. You have the same capacity. By becoming aware of your loops, replacing disempowering routines, stacking new habits, shaping your environment, rewarding progress, and linking habits to identity, you can construct a blueprint that rewires not just your behavior, but your very sense of self. From this foundation, growth is no longer a struggle. It becomes a natural expression of who you are, and that is the essence of becoming unstoppable. Chapter 7. Emotional Mastery, Reprogramming Your Inner World. To become unstoppable, you must master more than just your thoughts and habits. You must also learn to master your emotions. Emotions are not distractions from rationality, but essential forces that shape how we think, decide, and act. They influence memory, direct focus, and either fuel or drain motivation. For many people, emotions feel like uncontrollable waves that sweep them from one state to another without warning. One moment they feel confident, and the next they are drowning in doubt. One small failure can spiral into shame, and a single criticism can trigger anger or withdrawal. But unstoppable individuals understand that while emotions are powerful, they are not destiny. With awareness and deliberate practice, emotions can be guided, reframed, and even rewired, transforming them from unpredictable forces into allies of growth and resilience. The first key to emotional mastery is recognition. Most people move through life reacting to emotions without pausing to notice them. They lash out in anger, retreat in sadness, or procrastinate in anxiety, unaware of the underlying patterns. By cultivating awareness of emotional states, you begin to create distance between the feeling and the response. This awareness engages the prefrontal cortex, allowing conscious thought to intervene before automatic reaction takes over. Simply naming an emotion, I feel anxious, I feel frustrated, I feel hopeful, creates a sense of clarity and control. Naming does not erase the emotion, but it prevents you from being entirely consumed by it. With practice, you begin to notice emotions earlier, before they escalate, giving you a greater ability to respond with intention rather than reflex. Once recognition is established, the next step is reframing. Every emotion carries with it an interpretation, a story the brain attaches to an event. The same physiological arousal can be labeled as fear or excitement, as stress or challenge. The unstoppable learn to change the meaning they give to emotions. Failure does not mean inadequacy, but an opportunity to grow. Criticism is not a personal attack, but feedback that can be used constructively. Nervousness before an important task is not a sign of weakness, but a signal that the task matters. Reframing does not deny the intensity of emotions, but redirects their energy toward empowerment. By altering the story behind the emotion, you shift its impact on your behavior. The body plays a central role in emotional mastery. Emotions are not confined to the mind. They manifest physically through posture, breathing, and movement. Stress often tightens the muscles and shortens the breath, reinforcing the feeling of tension. Confidence often expands posture and deepens breathing, reinforcing the feeling of strength. The connection flows both ways. The body influences the mind as much as the mind influences the body. By deliberately adjusting posture, breath, and movement, you can shift emotional states. Standing tall, breathing deeply, and moving with energy signals the brain to adopt a more empowered state. These small adjustments create immediate feedback loops that help reprogram emotional responses. Another crucial element of emotional mastery is learning to regulate, not suppress. Suppression pushes emotions beneath the surface, where they grow stronger and eventually erupt in destructive ways. Regulation acknowledges emotions without letting them dictate behavior. Practices such as mindfulness meditation strengthen this skill by training the brain to observe thoughts and feelings without judgment. In meditation, you notice the rise and fall of emotions like passing clouds, realizing they are temporary states rather than permanent truths. This practice builds resilience, teaching the mind that emotions can be experienced fully without losing control. Emotional mastery also involves cultivating positive emotions deliberately. Gratitude, joy, love, and hope are not just pleasant feelings. They are states that rewire the brain toward resilience. When you practice gratitude, you train your mind to focus on abundance rather than lack. When you cultivate joy, even in small daily moments, you strengthen the brain's ability to notice beauty and possibility. Positive emotions broaden attention, enhance creativity, and build social connection, all of which contribute to long-term success. The unstoppable are not those who never experience negativity, but those who intentionally generate positivity to counterbalance it. By practicing gratitude journaling, savoring small victories, or expressing appreciation to others, you create emotional anchors that stabilize you during difficult times. Relationships are also shaped by emotional mastery. The ability to regulate your own emotions allows you to respond more effectively to the emotions of others. Instead of reacting defensively to criticism, you can listen with curiosity. Instead of escalating conflict with anger, you can de-escalate with calmness. This not only improves personal interactions, but also enhances leadership, as people are naturally drawn to those who can remain composed under pressure. Emotional mastery is contagious. When you manage your inner world, you influence the emotional climate of those around you, creating environments of trust and resilience. Memory is deeply intertwined with emotion. The brain encodes emotionally charged experiences more strongly than neutral ones. This is why painful memories linger and why moments of joy can become defining highlights of life. By deliberately creating emotionally positive experiences around growth, you strengthen the brain's association between progress and pleasure. For instance, if you celebrate each step toward a goal with genuine joy, the brain encodes the journey as rewarding, motivating you to continue. Conversely, if you attach shame or frustration to effort, the brain learns to avoid it. The unstoppable consciously create emotional anchors that reinforce their commitment to growth. Emotions also influence focus and performance. Too much anxiety can narrow attention so severely that you overlook opportunities, while too little arousal can leave you disengaged. The optimal state lies in the middle, where emotions energize without overwhelming. This is why reinterpreting nervousness as excitement is so effective. It places the body in a heightened state without tipping into panic. By learning to calibrate emotions, you can enter what psychologists call the zone, a state of flow where focus is sharp, creativity is high, and performance feels effortless. Emotional mastery enables you to access this state more consistently, turning high-pressure situations into opportunities for excellence. None of this implies that negative emotions disappear entirely. Anger, sadness, and fear will always arise. Emotional mastery means accepting their presence without surrendering control. Anger can become determination when directed toward justice or improvement. Sadness can become empathy, deepening connection with others. Fear can become alertness, sharpening focus in important moments. By seeing negative emotions as raw energy rather than enemies, you gain the ability to redirect them toward constructive outcomes. This reframing not only lessens their destructive impact but also transforms them into catalysts for growth. The journey of emotional mastery is not quick. It requires practice, patience, and persistence. Old emotional patterns, especially those reinforced by years of repetition, do not vanish overnight. But with each act of awareness, each moment of reframing, each deliberate breath or posture shift, you carve new pathways in the brain. Gradually, the automatic reactions weaken and new responses take their place. The more consistently you practice, the more natural emotional mastery becomes, until it feels less like a skill and more like part of who you are. Emotional mastery is essential for becoming unstoppable because it addresses the inner world that drives every outer result. Thoughts and habits may build structure, but emotions provide the fuel. Without mastery, emotions can burn uncontrollably, leading to self-sabotage. With mastery, emotions become a steady flame, lighting the path forward even in darkness. They guide focus, sustain motivation, deepen connection, and reinforce resilience. To reprogram your inner world is to take back authority over the very forces that shape your life. It is to declare that while you cannot always control circumstances, you can always control your state. And in that control lies the essence of unstoppable strength. Chapter 8. Reprogramming for Peak Performance. Peak performance is not a mysterious state reserved for the elite few. It is a condition of mind and body where potential is fully expressed, where focus sharpens, energy flows, and actions align seamlessly with intention. We often glimpse it in athletes who appear almost superhuman, artists who create with effortless brilliance, or professionals who deliver under extreme pressure. Yet the truth is that peak performance is not born from extraordinary talent alone, but from deliberate conditioning of the brain and nervous system. Just as the body can be trained to grow stronger, the mind can be rewired to perform at higher levels of clarity, resilience, and precision. To become unstoppable, you must learn to design conditions that make peak performance not a rare accident, but a repeatable reality. One of the keys to peak performance is the state known as flow. Flow occurs when you are completely absorbed in a task that is both challenging and achievable, where time seems to disappear and self-consciousness fades. In this state, the brain releases a cascade of neurochemicals such as dopamine, norepinephrine, and endorphins, which enhance focus, speed up learning, and create a sense of deep satisfaction. Flow is not random, it is triggered by specific conditions. The task must have clear goals, immediate feedback, and a balance between difficulty and skill. Too easy, and boredom sets in. Too difficult, and anxiety overwhelms. The sweet spot in the middle invites the brain into full engagement. By deliberately seeking tasks that stretch you just beyond your comfort zone, you prime your brain for flow and for performance that feels both intense and natural. Visualization is another tool for reprogramming the brain toward high performance. Neuroscience has shown that mental rehearsal activates many of the same neural circuits as actual practice. An athlete who visualizes the perfect swing, or a speaker who envisions delivering with confidence, strengthens the same pathways that physical repetition would reinforce. This does not mean visualization replaces practice, but it multiplies its effectiveness. By mentally rehearsing success with vivid detail, you reduce uncertainty and build familiarity, making performance feel less like risk and more like recall. The brain begins to expect success, and expectation often becomes reality. Self-talk also plays a profound role in performance. The internal dialogue you carry with you before and during a challenge can either amplify or sabotage your abilities. Negative self-talk statements such as, "I always mess this up," or "I am not ready," activate stress responses that impair focus and confidence. Positive, empowering self-talk statements such as, "I am prepared," "I can handle this," or "I grow with every challenge," activate circuits that reinforce resilience and focus. This is not about shallow affirmations, but about conditioning the brain to respond with encouragement rather than criticism. Over time, consistent positive self-talk rewires the default internal voice, making it a source of energy rather than resistance. Another element of reprogramming for peak performance is the management of physiological state. Performance is not only mental, but also physical. Energy, focus, and resilience depend on how well the body is prepared. Nutrition provides the raw materials for neurotransmitters. Sleep consolidates learning and repairs the brain, and exercise stimulates growth factors that enhance cognitive function. Even simple routines such as hydration, movement breaks, or controlled breathing directly influence the nervous system and mental clarity. The unstoppable treat their bodies as performance engines, understanding that neglecting basic care undermines mental potential. When body and mind are aligned, performance becomes sustainable rather than sporadic. Stress management is equally critical. While some stress sharpens focus, too much stress overwhelms the system and disrupts performance. The key is not to eliminate stress, but to regulate it. Practices such as mindfulness, meditation, and breathing exercises lower cortisol levels and calm the amygdala, allowing the prefrontal cortex to remain in control. By training yourself to enter calm states at will, you create flexibility in your nervous system. Instead of being hijacked by pressure, you learn to harness it as fuel. This resilience becomes invaluable in high-stakes moments, where the ability to stay calm under fire distinguishes those who crumble from those who excel. Peak performance also relies on routines and rituals that prime the brain for consistency. Just as athletes warm up before competition, you can create rituals that signal the brain it is time to perform. These rituals may include reviewing goals, practicing visualization, engaging in specific breathing patterns, or listening to music that stimulates focus. Over time, the brain associates the ritual with the state of performance, making it easier to enter the zone quickly. Rituals bypass hesitation and reduce uncertainty, shifting you into action with confidence. Another crucial aspect is the capacity for recovery. High performance is not about pushing relentlessly without rest. The brain and body operate in cycles of exertion and renewal. Just as muscles grow stronger during recovery after exertion, the brain consolidates learning and adapts during periods of rest. Without adequate recovery, performance deteriorates and burnout looms. Unstoppable individuals build recovery into their routines, valuing rest not as laziness, but as an essential part of growth. Sleep, relaxation, play, and reflection are not indulgences but investments in sustained excellence. Feedback is another tool for reprogramming. The brain thrives on feedback to adjust and improve. Immediate feedback helps refine performance, while constructive external feedback broadens perspective. Instead of fearing criticism, the unstoppable seek it, knowing that it provides data for growth. This requires humility and the ability to detach identity from performance. Failure does not mean you are a failure. It means you have more information to refine your approach. This mindset transforms feedback into fuel, accelerating the rewiring of the brain toward mastery. Resilience, perhaps the most defining characteristic of peak performers, emerges when setbacks are seen not as endpoints but as lessons. Every stumble becomes training for greater strength. Neuroscience supports this by showing how the brain grows through stress and recovery. Each challenge faced and overcome strengthens neural pathways of persistence. The unstoppable embrace this process, knowing that setbacks are not detours from the path of peak performance, but part of the path itself. By training themselves to interpret difficulty as opportunity, they maintain focus and momentum where others quit. Ultimately, reprogramming for peak performance is about alignment. It is the alignment of mind and body, of thought and action, of preparation and execution. It is not about striving for perfection, but about conditioning yourself to perform at your best consistently. Through visualization, self-talk, rituals, emotional regulation, physical care, and recovery, you build a system that supports peak states. These practices are not one-time techniques, but ongoing disciplines that gradually rewire your brain to perform under pressure, adapt to challenges, and sustain momentum. When performance becomes a trained response rather than a lucky accident, you gain confidence not from external circumstances, but from inner certainty. You know that when the moment arrives, you can trust yourself to rise. That trust is the essence of being unstoppable. It is not the absence of fear or struggle, but the presence of preparation, conditioning, and belief. Reprogramming the brain for peak performance is not about becoming superhuman, but about becoming fully human, using the extraordinary capacities already within you to their fullest extent. With this mastery, you step into challenges not with hesitation, but with clarity and energy, knowing that you are prepared to perform at your highest level again and again. Chapter 9. The Success Circuit. Aligning Thoughts, Goals, and Actions. Success is not the product of random effort, but of alignment. Many people work hard, dream big, and set ambitious goals, yet find themselves frustrated by a lack of progress. They may take action in bursts, but then lose momentum, or they may carry bold visions but fail to act consistently. The missing piece is alignment between thoughts, goals, and actions. When these three elements operate in harmony, they form what can be called the success circuit, a loop of energy and focus that continually reinforces itself. When misaligned, the circuit shorts out and progress stalls. Understanding and mastering this alignment is essential for becoming unstoppable because it transforms isolated efforts into sustained, compounding momentum. Thoughts are the foundation of the success circuit. Every goal begins as a thought, every action is preceded by thought, and every interpretation of outcome is filtered through thought. But not all thoughts are created equal. Limiting thoughts, such as "I cannot do this" or "this is too hard," break the circuit before it begins, draining energy and reinforcing avoidance. Empowering thoughts such as "I am capable" or "I am learning" create momentum, because they generate confidence and open the mind to possibility. Neuroscience shows that repeated thoughts strengthen neural pathways, making those thoughts easier to access and harder to resist. This means that cultivating empowering thoughts is not just motivational talk, but a neurological strategy. By training the brain to habitually generate supportive, constructive thoughts, you lay the groundwork for consistent alignment. Goals are the second component of the circuit, providing direction and clarity. Without goals, thoughts and actions scatter, lacking focus. But goals that are vague, unrealistic, or disconnected from identity can weaken the circuit as much as having no goals at all. The brain thrives on specificity. A goal framed as "I want to be healthier" is too vague to generate consistent action, while "I will exercise for 30 minutes 5 times a week" provides clear guidance. Specific goals activate the brain's problem-solving circuits, creating a sense of clarity and urgency. They also provide measurable progress, which fuels motivation through small wins. The success circuit strengthens when goals are not only specific, but also meaningful. Goals tied to personal values and identity generate intrinsic motivation, which is more sustainable than external pressure. A goal pursued out of genuine desire energizes the circuit, while a goal pursued out of obligation eventually drains it. Actions form the third component of the circuit, the tangible expression of thought and goal. Without action, empowering thoughts remain abstract, and clear goals remain fantasies. Action provides the evidence the brain needs to believe in the possibility of success. Each action, no matter how small, strengthens the loop by showing the brain that thought and goal are connected to reality. This is why momentum often begins with small steps. A single act aligned with a goal creates proof, and proof reinforces belief, which fuels further action. This loop is self-perpetuating. Thought influences goal, goal influences action, and action reinforces thought. When aligned, the circuit becomes a feedback system that compounds progress over time. Disruption occurs when one part of the circuit is out of alignment. Someone may have empowering thoughts and clear goals but fail to act, creating frustration and self-doubt. Another may take relentless action but with no clear goal, leading to burnout and wasted effort. Still another may set ambitious goals and act with discipline but harbor limiting thoughts that undermine confidence, creating constant inner resistance. Misalignment weakens the circuit and makes progress fragile. To become unstoppable, you must continually evaluate and realign all three components. Thought, goal, and action must point in the same direction, reinforcing one another rather than working at cross purposes. One way to strengthen the success circuit is through visualization. When you vividly imagine achieving a goal, you activate neural pathways that align thought and action. The brain rehearses the success as though it were real, creating a mental blueprint that guides behavior. Visualization also stimulates emotion, attaching excitement and determination to the goal, which strengthens the circuit further. When combined with consistent action, visualization becomes a powerful accelerator of alignment, because the brain experiences the goal as both mentally real and physically pursued. Another strategy is intentional planning. When goals remain vague intentions, actions often drift. By breaking goals into specific, actionable steps and scheduling them, you connect vision to behavior. Planning provides the bridge between thought and action. It reduces ambiguity, which often fuels procrastination, and creates structure, which sustains consistency. The act of planning also reinforces belief, because it transforms abstract goals into tangible strategies. Each completed step provides feedback to the brain, confirming progress and reinforcing the circuit. Language is another subtle but powerful tool for alignment. The words you use to describe yourself and your goals shape thought and action. Saying, "I hope to achieve this," creates a sense of uncertainty, while "I am committed to achieving this" reinforces determination. Language influences identity, and identity influences behavior. By deliberately choosing language that affirms commitment and capability, you strengthen the circuit at its root. Over time, the language you use becomes internalized as belief, guiding both thought and action automatically. The success circuit is also reinforced by accountability. When you share your goals with others or build systems of accountability, you create external feedback that keeps actions aligned with intentions. The brain is highly social, and the desire to maintain integrity with others often strengthens commitment. Accountability does not replace personal responsibility but amplifies it, ensuring that actions remain consistent even when motivation fluctuates. This external alignment supports the internal circuit, creating a stronger system overall. It is also important to recognize that alignment is not about rigidity. Life is dynamic, and goals may evolve as new insights and opportunities arise. The success circuit thrives on adaptability. When circumstances shift, you can reframe thoughts, adjust goals, and adapt actions without losing alignment. Flexibility prevents the circuit from breaking under pressure. Instead, it allows energy to keep flowing toward growth, even if the specific form of success changes. The unstoppable do not cling to outdated goals, but continually realign with their evolving vision, ensuring that their circuit remains strong and relevant. Over time, the success circuit becomes self-reinforcing. Thoughts grow naturally more empowering because actions provide evidence. Goals become more compelling because progress makes them feel attainable. Actions become more consistent because belief sustains motivation. What once required deliberate effort becomes automatic as the brain wires these patterns into default modes. Success becomes not a distant outcome, but a lived process, a daily expression of alignment. The success circuit is the difference between effort that fizzles and effort that compounds. It transforms scattered attempts into focused growth. It ensures that every part of you, mind, intention, and behavior, works in harmony. By aligning thoughts, goals, and actions, you create a loop of momentum that propels you forward even in the face of obstacles. This alignment does not eliminate challenges, but ensures that challenges are met with clarity, resilience, and consistency. When the circuit is active, success is not merely possible, it is inevitable, because every step reinforces the next. To live with an active success circuit is to experience a sense of power and purpose. You no longer waste energy battling inner resistance or chasing goals disconnected from your values. You no longer exhaust yourself with action that leads nowhere. Instead, you move forward with clarity, confidence, and momentum. This is not the result of luck, but of deliberate alignment, a choice to bring thought, goal, and action into harmony. When you master this circuit, you become unstoppable, not because the path is free of obstacles, but because your entire being is wired to move forward no matter what. Chapter 10: Overcoming Self-Sabotage. One of the most puzzling and painful experiences in the journey of growth is realizing that the greatest obstacle is not external but internal. Many people set goals with sincerity, take steps toward progress, and even taste moments of success, only to undermine themselves in ways that seem irrational. They procrastinate on important tasks, quit just before a breakthrough, make excuses to avoid opportunities, or revert to old habits after building momentum. This pattern is known as self-sabotage, and it is one of the most persistent barriers to becoming unstoppable. The paradox is that self-sabotage does not arise from laziness or lack of desire. but from hidden patterns within the mind that prioritize safety over growth. To overcome it, you must understand where it comes from, how it operates, and how to rewire your brain to break free from its grip. At its core, self-sabotage is a conflict between conscious intention and subconscious programming. Consciously, you may want success, health, love, or freedom. Subconsciously, however, your brain may associate these outcomes with risk, pain, or unworthiness. The brain's primary directive is not achievement, but survival, and it often interprets change as a threat. If success requires stepping into the unknown, taking risks, or challenging old identity structures, the subconscious may trigger resistance, disguised as procrastination, distraction, or excuses. To the conscious mind, these behaviors appear irrational. To the subconscious, they are protective mechanisms. Recognizing this truth is liberating because it shifts the narrative from "I am weak" to "my brain is trying to keep me safe." Once you see self-sabotage as misguided protection, you can begin to redirect it rather than shame yourself for it. One common form of self-sabotage is perfectionism. On the surface, perfectionism looks like high standards, but underneath, it is often fear of failure or rejection. By insisting that conditions must be perfect before taking action, the brain avoids the risk of making mistakes. Yet in doing so, it prevents progress altogether. Another form is procrastination, where the brain delays action to avoid discomfort. The temporary relief of avoidance is the reward, but it comes at the cost of long-term success. Self-sabotage can also appear in the form of negative self-talk, where the internal critic undermines confidence before effort even begins. Each of these patterns serves the same purpose: to reduce immediate discomfort, even if it sabotages long-term growth. Overcoming self-sabotage begins with awareness. You must learn to notice the patterns as they happen and trace them back to the beliefs fueling them. For example, if you consistently procrastinate on opportunities, ask what belief underlies the delay. Do you fear rejection? Do you doubt your worthiness? Do you believe failure defines you? By uncovering the hidden belief, you can address the root rather than merely fighting the symptom. Awareness transforms unconscious sabotage into conscious choice, creating the possibility of new responses. The next step is reframing failure itself. Much self-sabotage comes from the belief that failure is catastrophic, a final verdict on your ability or worth. When failure is seen this way, avoiding it becomes more important than pursuing growth. The unstoppable reframe failure as feedback. Every mistake provides data. Every setback builds resilience. Every attempt sharpens skill. When failure is reinterpreted as a stepping stone, the brain no longer treats it as a threat. This reduces the subconscious drive to sabotage and increases willingness to act. The more you practice this reframing, the more your brain associates action not with danger, but with learning. Self-sabotage also weakens when you create safety and growth. Because the brain resists change that feels overwhelming, breaking goals into smaller, manageable steps reduces the threat response. Instead of trying to leap into a massive transformation all at once, you take incremental steps that build confidence and evidence. Each small success reassures the subconscious that growth is safe, gradually reducing the instinct to resist. Over time, the brain rewires to expect safety in progress rather than danger. Identity plays a central role in overcoming sabotage. If you unconsciously identify as someone who fails, struggles, or lacks discipline, you will sabotage to remain consistent with that identity. The brain values coherence between belief and behavior. To break this cycle, you must adopt a new identity that aligns with success. Begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who learns, someone who persists. Each action aligned with this identity reinforces it, and each reinforcement weakens the old self-sabotaging identity. With persistence, the subconscious begins to align with the new self-position, reducing the need for sabotage. Another effective strategy is to interrupt the pattern with deliberate action. When you notice yourself about to procrastinate, distract, or withdraw, take a small action in the opposite direction immediately. Even 2 minutes of effort toward the task disrupts the loop of avoidance and creates evidence that you can act despite resistance. This interruption weakens the neural pathway of sabotage and strengthens the pathway of discipline. The more often you override sabotage with action, the weaker the old pattern becomes until it eventually fades. Emotional regulation is also vital. Many acts of self-sabotage are driven by the inability to tolerate uncomfortable emotions, such as anxiety, boredom, or self-doubt. By learning to sit with these emotions without reacting, you reduce their power to control behavior. Breathing, mindfulness, and reframing techniques help you ride the wave of discomfort until it passes, allowing you to stay committed to your goals. This skill is one of the most powerful tools in becoming unstoppable, because it teaches you that emotions are temporary and manageable, not commands you must obey. Supportive environments and relationships further weaken sabotage. When you surround yourself with people who believe in your potential and hold you accountable, the subconscious receives consistent reinforcement that growth is safe and expected. Conversely, environments filled with negativity, doubt, or distraction strengthen sabotage by validating limiting beliefs. Choosing your environment deliberately is not a luxury, but a necessity for rewiring. Ultimately, overcoming self-sabotage is about bringing the subconscious into alignment with conscious intention. It requires awareness to see the patterns, reframing to reinterpret their meaning, incremental steps to reduce perceived threat, identity shifts to support new behavior, and consistent action to build new evidence. Each time you succeed in acting despite resistance, you are not just achieving a small victory, you are rewiring your brain to expect success. Each time you resist the pull of sabotage, you strengthen the neural circuits of resilience and discipline. Self-sabotage may never disappear entirely, but it loses its power when you understand it and respond with intention. The unstoppable are not those who never feel the pull of avoidance or fear, but those who act anyway, consistently choosing growth over comfort. They do not shame themselves for sabotage, but see it as a signal pointing to areas where deeper beliefs need to be rewired. By addressing those beliefs and aligning identity with success, they dismantle the patterns from within. In the end, self-sabotage is not proof of weakness, but evidence of potential. It shows that you are standing on the edge of growth, where the subconscious resists because it senses change. By moving through it with awareness, courage, and persistence, you transform the very patterns that once held you back into the foundation of your unstoppable self. What once felt like betrayal from within becomes the training ground for mastery. And with that mastery, nothing, not even your own doubts, can stand in the way of your forward momentum. Chapter 11. Unstoppable Relationships and Influence. Becoming unstoppable is not a solitary pursuit. While personal mastery over thoughts, emotions, and habits is vital, no individual thrives in complete isolation. Human beings are inherently social, wired for connection, collaboration, and influence. Relationships shape the environment in which you live, and influence determines how you affect the people around you. To truly embody an unstoppable life, you must learn to cultivate relationships that empower you and develop the ability to influence others in ways that inspire, uplift, and create mutual growth. The quality of your connections can either accelerate or sabotage your journey. When your inner world is rewired for success, but your relationships reinforce old patterns of doubt, negativity, or limitation, progress becomes fragile. When both your inner world and outer connections are aligned, momentum compounds exponentially. Relationships are mirrors. They reflect back to us the beliefs, behaviors, and attitudes we project. This is why people who struggle with self-doubt often attract environments that confirm it, while those who carry confidence often find themselves surrounded by support and opportunity. The brain's mirror neurons, which fire both when we act and when we observe others acting, make us highly susceptible to emotional contagion. When surrounded by negativity, cynicism, or fear, we unconsciously absorb these states. Conversely, when surrounded by positivity, determination, and vision, we absorb those too. This is why choosing who you spend time with is one of the most powerful decisions you can make. The unstoppable consciously curate their relationships, seeking out those that challenge them to grow and distancing themselves from those that consistently drain or undermine. But it is not only about receiving influence, it is also about giving it. Influence is not manipulation, but the ability to inspire others through authenticity, clarity, and example. People are drawn to those who embody conviction and resilience. When your actions align with your words and your identity radiates consistency, your influence naturally expands. Influence begins not with grand speeches or formal authority, but with presence. Simply showing up with calm confidence in moments of chaos, or offering encouragement when others are discouraged, can shift the emotional climate of a room. The unstoppable recognize that every interaction is an opportunity to model the mindset and behaviors that lead to growth. Communication lies at the heart of both relationships and influence. The way you express yourself can build trust or erode it, can invite collaboration or spark resistance. Clear, empathetic communication is a skill that can be developed like any other. It requires listening deeply, not just to words but to emotions. It requires speaking in ways that affirm dignity, even in disagreement. And it requires aligning nonverbal cues, tone, body language, and eye contact with intention. When communication is authentic and respectful, relationships strengthen and influence deepens. The unstoppable are not necessarily the most eloquent but the most congruent. Their words and actions match, and that congruence creates trust. Another element of unstoppable relationships is reciprocity. The strongest connections are built not on one-sided taking, but on mutual giving. This does not mean keeping score, but fostering an attitude of generosity, offering value without immediate expectation of return. When you consistently bring positivity, encouragement, or assistance to others, you create networks of goodwill that often return support when you most need it. This cycle of giving and receiving builds resilience not just individually but collectively. The unstoppable understand that success is amplified when shared, and they build communities where growth multiplies across many rather than being hoarded by one. Emotional intelligence is also central to building relationships that last. This involves not only awareness of your own emotions but also sensitivity to the emotions of others. When you can recognize what others are feeling and respond appropriately, you deepen trust and connection. Emotional intelligence allows you to navigate conflict constructively, turning potential division into opportunities for greater understanding. It allows you to motivate others by tapping into what matters most to them rather than imposing your own agenda. Influence rooted in emotional intelligence is sustainable because it respects the individuality of others while guiding them towards shared vision. It is equally important to establish boundaries. Being unstoppable does not mean saying yes to everyone or tolerating relationships that consistently drain energy. Boundaries protect your time, focus, and emotional state, allowing you to invest fully in the relationships that matter most. Without boundaries, influence becomes diluted and relationships can turn toxic. With boundaries, influence becomes intentional and relationships become sources of strength. The unstoppable do not fear disappointing others in the short term if it means protecting their long-term growth and contribution. Leadership is perhaps the clearest expression of unstoppable influence. Leadership does not require a title or formal authority. It begins with leading yourself. When you demonstrate discipline, resilience, and clarity in your own life, others naturally look to you as an example. From there, leadership expands to guiding teams, communities, and even movements. True leadership is not about control, but about creating environments where others can thrive. It is about recognizing potential in others and helping them unlock it. When you embody an unstoppable mindset, you become a catalyst, inspiring others to rise to their own highest potential. This ripple effect extends your impact far beyond your own achievements. The science of relationships reinforces this truth. Studies consistently show that social support is one of the strongest predictors of resilience, health, and long-term success. People with supportive networks are more likely to persevere through challenges, recover from setbacks, and achieve meaningful goals. The brain, designed for connection, rewards positive relationships with the release of oxytocin, a hormone that fosters trust and bonding. These biochemical reinforcements make healthy relationships not only psychologically valuable but physiologically essential. In contrast, toxic relationships flood the body with stress hormones, impairing performance and draining energy. To become unstoppable, you must align your relationships with your vision, ensuring that your environment fuels growth rather than hinders it. Influence also extends beyond personal relationships into the larger world. Every person carries the potential to influence through ideas, actions, and example. Social media, professional platforms, and community engagement all amplify the reach of your influence. But the principle remains the same. Authenticity and alignment are the foundation. Influence built on pretense or manipulation may achieve short-term results, but will eventually collapse. Influence built on genuine conviction, consistent action, and respect for others endures. The unstoppable recognize that their influence carries responsibility, shaping not only their own lives, but the lives of those who look to them for guidance. Ultimately, unstoppable relationships and influence are not about control or dominance, but about mutual empowerment. They are about creating connections where both parties grow, about leading in ways that inspire freedom rather than dependence, about modeling a way of being that others naturally want to follow. They are about recognizing that success is not only personal achievement, but collective uplift. When your inner mastery radiates outward through authentic relationships and inspiring influence, your impact multiplies. You no longer move through life alone, but as part of an interconnected web of support, encouragement, and shared vision. To cultivate these kinds of relationships and influence, you must continually return to authenticity, generosity, empathy, and clarity. You must be willing to release connections that consistently pull you backward and to invest deeply in those that propel you forward. You must lead yourself with such integrity that others cannot help but take notice. And you must remember that every interaction, however small, is an opportunity to embody the unstoppable mindset for others to witness. In the end, becoming unstoppable is not simply about mastering your own mind and habits, but about shaping the environment around you. Relationships and influence are the amplifiers of your growth, turning individual momentum into collective force. When you surround yourself with empowering connections and use your influence to inspire others, you create a legacy that extends far beyond personal success. You become not only unstoppable in your own journey, but also a source of unstoppable energy for others, proving that transformation is not just personal, but contagious. Chapter 12. Living Unstoppable, Making Transformation Last. The journey of becoming unstoppable is not about temporary bursts of motivation or isolated victories. It is about creating a way of living that endures, a transformation so deeply integrated into your identity and daily choices that it becomes who you are rather than something you do occasionally. Many people experience moments of inspiration or short periods of progress only to slip back into old patterns when life grows difficult. They treat transformation as an event rather than a process, as though one breakthrough will erase years of conditioning. But true transformation lasts only when it is woven into the fabric of everyday life, when the principles of resilience, focus, and growth are practiced consistently until they become second nature. Living unstoppable is about sustaining momentum not for weeks or months, but for a lifetime. Sustainability begins with identity. When the behaviors and habits you have cultivated are anchored in your sense of self, they stop feeling like chores and start feeling like expressions of who you are. If you see yourself as someone who is disciplined, then showing up consistently becomes natural. If you see yourself as someone who thrives under challenge, then facing difficulties becomes an opportunity to live your truth. This is why the deepest rewiring happens not only at the level of thought and action, but at the level of identity. You must continually reinforce the story of who you are becoming, reminding yourself that you are no longer defined by the limitations of the past. The more this identity is practiced and embodied, the less effort it takes to sustain. Consistency is another cornerstone of lasting transformation. Greatness is not built in a single act of courage or a single day of discipline, but in the accumulation of countless small choices repeated over time. The unstoppable understand that daily rituals are what keep transformation alive. Morning practices that center the mind, evening reflections that reinforce gratitude, routines that support health and focus, all of these create a rhythm that sustains progress. Consistency does not mean perfection. It means refusing to abandon the path even when setbacks occur. Missing a day, faltering in a habit, or facing discouragement does not negate transformation. It is part of the process. What matters is returning quickly, refusing to let temporary lapses become permanent regression. Sustaining transformation also requires renewal. The unstoppable are not machines. They do not run endlessly without rest. They understand that the cycles of stress and recovery are essential for growth. Just as muscles grow stronger in recovery after exertion, the mind grows stronger in reflection and rest after periods of challenge. Building practices of renewal, adequate sleep, time in nature, creative play, deep relaxation, ensures that momentum does not collapse under exhaustion. Far from being indulgent, renewal is the fuel that allows consistency to continue. Without it, even the strongest willpower eventually falters. With it, resilience becomes almost limitless. Another key to making transformation last is adaptability. Life is dynamic and circumstances will inevitably change. Goals will evolve, environments will shift, and unexpected challenges will appear. Those who treat their path as rigid often break under pressure. Those who embrace adaptability bend without losing direction. The unstoppable continually realign their thoughts, goals, and actions with their evolving vision. They do not cling to outdated strategies but adjust with flexibility while keeping the essence of their purpose intact. This adaptability ensures that transformation is not tied to specific conditions, but remains alive no matter how the external world changes. Community and relationships also play a vital role in sustaining transformation. No matter how strong you are individually, you are influenced by the people around you. By surrounding yourself with those who challenge, encourage, and hold you accountable, you create an environment that reinforces your unstoppable identity. Isolation breeds stagnation, but connection multiplies growth. Whether through mentors, peers, or communities of shared purpose, these relationships provide perspective, support, and reinforcement. They remind you of your strength when you forget, celebrate your victories when you achieve, and challenge you to rise higher when you grow complacent. Transformation thrives when it is shared. Living unstoppable also means continuing to grow beyond the milestones already achieved. One of the greatest dangers after progress is complacency. When you believe you have arrived, you stop expanding, and the old patterns of limitation begin to creep back. The unstoppable avoid this trap by continually setting new visions, pursuing new challenges, and exploring new dimensions of themselves. Growth is not a phase, but a way of life. This does not mean living in constant dissatisfaction, but in constant curiosity. It means celebrating progress while asking, what more is possible? This orientation keeps transformation alive, ensuring that success is not a plateau, but a springboard to new horizons. Reflection is another powerful practice for sustaining transformation. By regularly pausing to examine where you have been, what you have learned, and where you are going, you reinforce your journey. Reflection strengthens awareness, highlights progress, and reveals patterns that need adjustment. It also anchors gratitude, reminding you of how far you have come. Without reflection, life can blur into a cycle of endless striving. With reflection, you carry clarity, purpose, and appreciation, which strengthen the identity of being unstoppable. Perhaps the most important principle in making transformation last is self-compassion. The journey of growth is not smooth, and setbacks are inevitable. Many people sabotage themselves not because they fail, but because they respond to failure with shame and harshness. This erodes resilience and makes them abandon the path altogether. Self-compassion allows you to view setbacks as natural, to forgive yourself, and to recommit without losing momentum. It transforms failure into feedback and disappointment into determination. Compassion does not weaken discipline, it sustains it by preventing burnout and despair. When you treat yourself as an ally rather than an enemy, transformation endures. Ultimately, living unstoppable is about integration. It is about weaving the practices, beliefs, and identities you have developed into the fabric of your daily existence until they no longer feel separate from you but part of you. It is about sustaining momentum not through force but through alignment. It is about continually nurturing the inner and outer conditions that make resilience, focus, and growth natural rather than forced. When transformation reaches this level of integration, it becomes self-sustaining. You do not need to push endlessly because the wiring of your brain, the rhythm of your habits, and the structure of your environment all carry you forward. To live unstoppable is not to live without difficulty. Challenges, uncertainty, and setbacks will always come, but when your transformation is deeply rooted, these no longer derail you. They become opportunities to express your identity, to practice your habits, and to reaffirm your beliefs. They become the very conditions that prove the authenticity of your unstoppable life. In this way, transformation is not fragile but durable, not temporary but lasting. When you reach this point, you realize that becoming unstoppable was never about chasing a finish line, but about becoming the kind of person who thrives in the journey itself. It is about living each day with clarity, resilience, and purpose, knowing that no matter what comes, you will continue to rise, adapt, and grow. This is the essence of lasting transformation. It is not a spark that flares and fades, but a flame that endures, lighting your path and inspiring others long after the initial excitement has passed. To live unstoppable is to make growth a way of being. And once this way of being is fully embraced, it becomes impossible to go back to the limited life you once knew.